We help small to medium-sized businesses get online and establish their online presence with services like web development, and then enhance your online presence with services like SEO, SEM, or social media. But my favorite part of my job is partnering with great organizations like SCORE to be able to put on these workshops so that you guys can help or get help really understanding what's needed to kind of manage these things, as well as what they are, the changes that are there, so that if you're doing these either by yourself, if you're having someone internally in your company do these, or even if you're hiring someone externally, again, we have a good understanding of what's going on, what they are, why they're important, and potentially even then how to implement them ourselves, or just more strategy. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation here. As Score was kind of talking about, this is being recorded, and feel free to put in any of your questions inside the chat, and I will make sure I get to those. And you will be getting a copy of the presentation. There we go. So welcome. Again, my name is Ben Tice, and today we're going to be talking about Intro to Google Ads. So how do we grow our business with digital advertising? So what we're going to be talking about today is what is SEM, or search engine marketing, some of the different kind of ad options. We're even going to go over some of the changes that have been happening to Google Ads, even just within 2022. Then we'll kind of get into setting up an account, creating accounts, and specifically the ads. And then also throughout the presentation, going over some kind of tips, tricks, and strategies. So again, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, just some things to kind of clear out when it comes to terminology is that when we talk about search engine marketing, we use that term now instead of usually just saying, like, for instance, Google Ads, Google AdWords, PPC. The reason we do that is this is more of an all-encompassing kind of term. You know, we're going to be focusing on Google Ads today, but technically there are other platforms like Bing and other ones out there that you can run similar ads on as well. The reason we also use the term search engine marketing is because a term like PPC, or pay-per-click, there are now models where you're not paying per click. You might be paying per impression or other things like that. So just so you guys know, is as you start to see the term search engine marketing, or SEM, it's just more an encompassing term to all the different digital advertising. It still encompasses Google AdWords. It still encompasses PPC. It's just a different term that we essentially kind of use. Also, Google is technically no longer called Google AdWords, even though I even sometimes still refer to that because it goes back a long ways. It's technically called Google Ads now. And the reason I just mentioned that is, again, we're talking about AdWords. A lot of times, sometimes we have ads that don't have even words in them. They may have pictures or visual displays. So again, just some of the different terminologies. So there's also, we're going to be kind of talking about, but there are different types of advertising now. And honestly, even within the past 5-6 years, a lot of these have even just come out of the woodwork or been created, or really have come to fruition that even small to medium-sized businesses can now be taking advantage of these. And so we, of course, have our classic text ads, which are going to be kind of our Google AdWords or Express. Also, then we have visual display ads and retargeting. We can advertise on YouTube. We have Google Shopping if you're part of e-commerce. We have Google Guarantee, which is similar to like an Angie's List for Google. So we have, you know, really at the end of the day, whatever type of business you are, small, big, B2B, B2C, product-based, service-based, local, national, there is going to be an advertising opportunity for you that's going to fit your business, your demographics, and your goals and KPIs. So, but obviously with anything, things kind of change over time. And so a couple of things that I want to kind of share with you guys just to kind of be aware of that you either might hear of or you might encounter, or for instance, maybe you worked on ads in Google AdWords and Google Ads, you know, a few years ago, and now you're coming back to it, you might see a few different kind of changes. The first is Google is really hitting hard with two-factor authentication. We're probably actually kind of familiar with this. This is like, for instance, when you log in to your different account, you know, Facebook has this, normal Google accounts has this, GoDaddy, a ton of accounts have this. And this is where you like get your code to kind of send to your phone to be able to log into your account. The reason I'm just saying this is Google is really starting to crack down on making sure people have two-factor authentication, and most likely is going to kind of force you or kind of, you know, give you notices to make sure by a certain date, if you already have your account, that you need to kind of switch over. And again, it will show you how. It's just trying to protect you. They've had a lot of instances where people's accounts unfortunately have been hijacked or things like that. So again, I know that sometimes two-factor authentication with getting a text or things like that can sometimes be a pain in the butt. But again, it's for your safety and for your protection of your account, because a lot of times we are spending a lot of capital on these different types of ads. I would say the biggest change, though, that has come from 2022, and you'll see a notice of this, especially if you created ads in 2021 or prior, or even at the beginning of this year, technically, is, and I'll kind of get into this when we start actually creating ads, but now the default ad that you're only able to do is called responsive ads. And I'll kind of explain this, but this is a newer type of ad than that was done previously. Previously, like for instance, you would actually create all your titles and your descriptions of a text ad all in one, and you were kind of controlling those. Here, the reason we get the word responsive ad is you are now creating multiple titles, multiple descriptions, and then Google is essentially using AI and doing different combinations and actually then creating the ads that are going to be shown. And again, I'll kind of walk you through this once we get into ads, but this is a pretty big change just because, again, the way that now we're creating ads is going to be different. I would actually say it's for the better, and it actually helps a lot of people that are either managing this themselves or even trying to understand and giving you more opportunities to kind of be able to test different types of titles and descriptions. And again, I'll get into this as we get into actually creating ads, but that is one big thing that you're going to see. Now, if you did create ads in 2020, 2021, 2018, whatever it was, those ads will still be, again, be able to be run. But if you create any new ones, they're now going to be in this new responsive ad format that you're going to be able to see when you log into your Google Ads. Also, Google also constantly is trying to just, update its software, just get better, obviously get rid of bugs. But one thing that they're really trying to do, and you can kind of see an example of this on the far right-hand side here with a screenshot, is more and better recommendations. Using AI, artificial intelligence, to be able to kind of go through your account and try to give you some tips, some strategies. Now, I'll be honest, you have to, again, be careful with some of these because not all of their automated kind of recommendations you should be kind of taking. So you want to make sure that we're just not clicking a bunch of buttons and saying, yes, do them. But it is kind of nice that there are some recommendations to at least look into to be able to see if that would be something that you should be implementing or not. And then there's also another kind of feature called Google Ads Experiments. This is essentially like when you make changes to your ads now, you can actually start to test and see what those either kind of forecast or start to see what those changes are kind of doing for you. So it's really kind of, in a sense, kind of doing some A/B testing, if you're kind of familiar with that, doing different versions. And it's just kind of called Google Ads Experiments, where you're able to kind of just in a better UX or user experience kind of standpoint, you can kind of be able to kind of measure those better, see those better, and implement those better. So those are just some changes that we're kind of seeing in 2022 that you might want to pay attention to. Now, getting back to the actual kind of Google Ads is kind of just going down just a little bit further. And you can kind of read these as I'm kind of talking about, but just to kind of give you just at least a brief example and overview of these, so you kind of know the different ad types that we're kind of dealing with. So the classic one is called Google Ads. This is pretty much the classic text ads. This is what the majority of people kind of start with and most likely are doing. These are, again, when we're searching for local painter near me, and you see those text ads that look like organic search results with the little ad symbol next to it. That's what we're kind of talking about here. You have, again, full management over this. We can target any location. We're able to really kind of do whatever we want. With great power comes great responsibility kind of thing, where there is a lot of things that we can manage. But again, you've got to be able to kind of manage those. So every little setting we can take advantage of. It's very complex. But if we can master this, or we can get more familiar with this, this is the system that a lot of times is going to yield you a very good ROI when we start kind of getting into it. We can also do e-commerce. You can also do service-based, location down to, you can do a zip code or even a radius. So, again, you get to be very, very specific. Now, there is a more kind of watered down version, so to speak, or a scaled down version of AdWords or Google Ads, but just using AdWords just as the, again, connection just to the text ads. And this essentially uses Google AI to kind of run your campaigns. So we get less control, but there's less management that's essentially kind of needed. This works really well for people that are, again, well-known small businesses in a local kind of area. So again, a painter might find, again, some success with AdWords Express. Again, what you're going to find with AdWords Express is it's using a lot of the same methodology as AdWords or just the classic kind of ads. It's just that you aren't going to have as much control with it. So sometimes when, we'll see a lot of people start with AdWords Express to kind of get themselves going, especially if there's a business or a product or service that they're essentially offering that's very well known. But a lot of times we see they get to a point where it's like, okay, I need to go further in depth. I need to have more control over this. And then you can kind of switch to AdWords as well. So it's just understanding, again, what's out there. Again, just some options that are there when we have the two kind of classic text ads. Also, then when we get into kind of display ads, so like the visual kind of more billboard type of ads. So when you go to kind of random site, if it's the Star Tribune, New York Times, you might see some of those banner ads up at the top or to the side. That a lot of times is going to be Google display ads. And so we can do one of two kind of versions. It's actually creating the same ad. So you'll have different dimensions. You'll be able to create different collateral with different creative for obviously whatever you're trying to advertise. And Google display ads are more just like, for instance, just plain solicited billboards. So you're going to say, hey, I want to go after these types of people with these different types of websites, and our billboards are going to kind of go out there. Retargeting and remarketing, it takes it a step further in saying there's almost a trigger that has to happen in order for the display ad to do. So instead of you just saying, hey, I want to go after people that are on Star Tribune, you would say, hey, I actually now want to be able to kind of follow somebody around for a few days if they've gone to my website or they've had some type of interactivity with you. Again, you might have experienced this, like for instance, if you put a pair of shoes into your shopping cart and you didn't purchase it, and then you coincidentally see that pair of shoes for the next 3 days, that is retargeting, remarketing. This can be super, super successful mixed with, like, for instance, a Google Ads, just classic text campaign. We, a lot of times when we're working with clients, we really propose running a classic text campaign and then kind of doing a retargeting, remarketing, especially if your, again, product or service that you're selling is a higher priced item or is a longer decision-making process. Let me just give you kind of a couple examples there. Again, if you're selling maybe sunglasses or something like that, you can still do retargeting, but a lot of times those might be more impulse purchases. But if you're selling, for instance, a couch or a mattress that I might have to make a decision on, or I'm kind of, maybe doing some of my own research on, well, retargeting can be fantastic. Sometimes we also find this where we actually spend so much time on SEO getting us to number one. But a lot of times what we see is people, for instance, will go to number one first, but then maybe they want to check out number two and number three to get a better sense. Well, in that kind of case, it kind of sometimes sucks a little bit to be SEO and be number one because you weren't the last one that they thought of. Well, retargeting can help you with that. So it can pair very nicely, for instance, with SEO. So again, that couch or that mattress, or like I said, if your decision-making process is maybe a little bit longer, or maybe you have a more intricate type of service, like for example, if you're a divorce attorney, obviously that decision isn't going to be overnight probably, and it's got a lot of emotion. You're probably not ready just to look at one website and make that decision. You might need to take some time. Well, again, retargeting or remarketing can remind somebody of you in that kind of context. And so it's just remembering that, again, kind of utilizing these different types of channels or way that we can do marketing, they're going to speak to different people. And they're also going to speak to different people in their different kind of decision-making process. Your classic text ads are going to speak to those people that are super ready and super direct. And we may not know that, obviously, because we don't know their mindset of what's there. But if we pair that then with like a retargeting or remarketing campaign, where now it speaks to them visually and kind of reminds them, that's where, again, the idea of just trying to increase our ROI or return on our investment for every dollar that we're spending on there. So, and you technically could just run display ads or just run remarketing or retargeting ads. I'm just saying that just as a recommendation from us, and what we a lot of times bring up to our clients is, looking at those text ads mixed with those retargeting and remarketing ads. And they're the most applicable because, again, you can do them for products, you can do them for service, you can do them for B2B, you can do them for B2C. That's what's kind of nice about these 4 different kind of options, and mainly kind of 2, meaning text ads and display ads. The next few are going to be a little bit more, can kind of be a little bit more niche, so to speak. And so one of them is YouTube ads. So this is, if you've ever watched, YouTube videos and they have those ads that, pop up or are playing right before your video. Well, same thing here. A lot of small businesses and even medium-sized business that we work with don't realize that you don't have to be a national big, insurance company or car company to run those. You can run very detailed small video ads that are targeted just to the Twin Cities, just to Chicago, or wherever your service area might be. Of course, now you do have to a lot of times have those videos, of course, and kind of make sure that those are kind of created in at least a high enough quality that it's not going to detract from your brand or going to have obviously a call to action and kind of attention grabber. But YouTube ads can be really successful because it is based off a kind of impression-based marketing. We're kind of someone seeing us right there and then being able to kind of engage with us. So highly recommend, looking into some of those video, kind of ads, especially if you're starting to create videos, even for SEO purposes, just for general social media purposes. A lot of those might be able to be utilized for YouTube as well. Google Shopping is definitely another way. Now, again, this one's only going to be applicable to people that actually have essentially e-commerce shopping cart online. What is kind of nice about Google Shopping, though, is in the middle of the pandemic, Google actually came out with a free version of Google Shopping. And so what this is if you've ever been to google.com, there's a little tab at the top that says shopping, and you can essentially go in there and Google is aggregating all of these different kind of products when you're looking for purple snowshoes or, orange blanket, whatever it may be. Well, before, to even be considered and to be even displayed on the Google Shopping platform, you actually had to pay for that. Now, there were different price levels if you wanted to be featured on google.com, if you wanted to be towards the top on Google Shopping, or just your general listings. Well, what Google has now done to kind of help small businesses throughout the kind of the pandemic and just kind of change their ways of thinking is they've now made a free version of Google Shopping. And so, again, you can still pay for, if you go to google.com and you type in a product, most likely you'll get a ribbon of, again, products there that are actual ads. So if I type in purple snowshoes, I most likely will get a ribbon of different products. On google.com, those are being paid for. If I go to Google Shopping, the ones at the way top, those are still being paid for. But all the rest of them are now free. And this goes into how well your e-commerce is set up. This goes into how well your SEO is set up and everything like that. So the reason I just say this is if you have a shop, absolutely look to take advantage of Google Shopping, and also look to, again, take advantage of Google Ads as well. And then the last one is Google Guarantee. This one is going to be mainly kind of Google's versions of Angie's List. Really works for, select industries, kind of like the trades or the home services, your roofers, your plumbers, those types of ones. That's specifically what this is made for. You can actually get a full list if you are in the service-based industry to see if your service is allowed on Google Guaranteed. Just by Googling it, they always have kind of an updated list of all the industries that they're allowing for people to run ads on. So that might be another one there, but you can kind of see that some of these might not be applicable, whereas the Google search or the Google display ads pretty much are applicable to anybody. So those hopefully will give you kind of a few examples of the different ad types that are there. Now, when we start to actually get into Google ads like the classic, what we're kind of talking about here is traditional advertising or even display, kind of even social media advertising, is that you essentially are having the magnifying glass saying, hey, I think these people would be interested in my product or service. And again, there is a place and that type of marketing works. But where it's different with specifically Google text ads is now our ad is only showing up to those people that are in the mindset to search and are actively looking for something. And you're deciding what those keywords are that you want your ads to show up for. That's honestly why Google Ads is so successful, is because, again, it goes back to almost the psychology of the person that is actually sitting down, typing out a search, looking for a painter near me, looking for an orange blanket, looking for the best pet insurance, whatever it may be. Someone's actually in the mindset to find something and is actually actively searching for it instead of you going to them and thinking that they might be interested in your product or service. That's, again, why it's so successful. And that's what we're kind of talking about here with our classic text ads. So just to kind of reiterate, I know I've been kind of talking about this, but just making sure that we know it's the little ad symbol that you kind of see. So when I type in business consultant and I get these different types of ads that are popping up, they really look like local listings. Google used to really, again, differentiate them with actually colored backgrounds, then yellow badges, then green colored badges. Now, you can still see that ad symbol, but it's not as clear as day. And a lot of people don't even realize they're clicking on an ad anymore. And this is also where the whole pay-per-click or PPC gets its name, because if you actually do run text ads, believe it or not, they actually show up for free. So you're running your whole entire campaign for free, essentially, and you're only getting charged when someone actually clicks on that ad. Google's thinking and methodology is that, hey, we'll show them for free, but then once someone clicks on them, it's your responsibility. We've essentially given you that lead. You now need to convert them with your website. So when we decide to start to do Google Ads is we're going to start obviously with kind of creating an account. There's a little bit of kind of tip that I like to kind of give is that there are two different types of accounts or account settings that you can do for the type of account that you're creating for Google Ads. One is called Search Network Only. The other one is called Search Network with Display Select. Google is going to recommend to you to do Search Network with Display Select. What that means is your ads, if you click Search Network with Display Select, that means that your, again, text ads and other ads won't just show up on google.com. They'll actually show up on other sites and other partner sites that Google has. To be honest with you, we a lot of times, especially for small to medium-sized businesses, when you're doing this, I would recommend with doing a search network only. What that does is that kind of restricts Google to pretty much just put it on their platform and not start to kind of get, traction on other sites. Now, again, Google's going to tell you it's recommended for search network with display select because you can get more views and things like that. And I understand that. But I can almost guarantee you with the budgets that you guys are going to be dealing with, you're absolutely going to be able to spend that on Google. And really, if you think about it, that's most likely your mindset going into this. You may not even realize that your text ads may be on other different kind of platforms and different sites. And a lot of times what we found is they're just not as effective and it just doesn't hold the same ROI. So again, you can do what you like. I just a lot of times recommend, especially if you're starting, to really start with search network only and really kind of control Google just to display them on their own platform. What's kind of nice is, again, if you remember talking about Google Ads and Google AdWords just as the, again, the overarching account, not AdWords Express, is that we get to control all of these other kind of things. So we can actually influence Google to say what devices we want our ads to show up on. Obviously, that can potentially be influenced by the type of, again, business, service, or product that you're essentially kind of selling. You can, again, favor one device over another. You can do those sorts of things and you can actually communicate that to Google within your settings and as you're creating these ads. Also, one of the most important ones is location. You can essentially tell Google, hey, I only want to be showing these ads in this location. And you actually have two options when you pick location. You can tell Google to say, hey, someone physically has to be in this service area for my ad to show up, and Google will essentially just do there. Or you can actually have another option, for instance, that if they indicate that they're outside of the service area, but still searching for something inside the service area, that you would be found. Let me give you an example of that. Say, again, I only want the service area. That means that I would physically have to be in that service area as I'm looking for, again, painter near me or painter Minneapolis. Then again, I'd have to be in that service area that the company kind of determined for me for the ad to kind of pop up. If I get outside of that, maybe it ends at St. Paul and I go to Stillwater, it's not going to show to me. The reason that you might want to consider, though, doing the other option where if someone indicates that they're searching for you is, for instance, maybe you are a, again, home care facility for elderly. And maybe one of the, again, children are in Duluth and they're actually searching for Minneapolis, again, senior home care. Well, in that case, Google would say, hey, they're in Duluth, but they've pretty much indicated that they're looking for something in this area. We now can serve that ad to them. If you only have the GPS or the geo-specific area, that person in Duluth that's specifically saying Minneapolis home care, essentially looking for you, if they do that, you may not be able to be found. So I always recommend kind of that second option because, again, Google's going to try to protect you because that individual has to indicate, usually with the city name or something like that, that they're actually searching for your service area. But just something to kind of consider and just to kind of know. What's really also kind of nice about locations is you have a couple different ways to actually communicate this to Google. I usually kind of say, if you think of Google Maps, anything you can do on Google Maps, you can really kind of communicate here. So what we're talking about is you could say a whole state, you could say regions, you could say different neighborhoods, you could say different zip codes, different cities, or you could even do radius. You could drop a pin right in St. Louis Park and say, okay, it's 20 miles around St. Louis Park. That's what I kind of want to do. So you get to essentially kind of control that and be able to kind of tell Google what, where you want to serve those ads. Also, budget. Budget's obviously a very important one. Is sometimes people don't know, but Google is actually, again, they calculate under a daily budget, not a monthly budget, which is sometimes kind of odd because all of us, mainly as businesses, are going to essentially determine monthly budgets. So if you are dealing with a monthly budget, what you need to essentially do is just divide it by 30, and that's going to be your daily budget that you would communicate to Google. So if you have a $500 a month budget, you would divide that by 30, which is $16.66 a day. You would then kind of communicate that to Google. The reason Google moved into a daily budget is because it allows you to be able to kind of run those ads all throughout the month. Before, what was happening to people when they had monthly budget options is that they were running through all of their budget 10, 15, 20 days into it, and then not being able to run ads at all for a part of the month. So this is also another kind of thing for Google to kind of be able to help you. And that's why they go with that's why they essentially go with a daily budget. Also, there's some different bid strategies, depending on, again, what type of service, what type of product, where you are, if you need to go faster, if you need to, if you're fine going slower with some types of things, you can essentially say, hey, I want the lowest cost per click possible, or hey, I want to be number one no matter what the cost at there. So you get to kind of, communicate to Google some of your desires and interests when you're looking at kind of setting up your bid strategy. And last but not least, another thing to kind of look at for you guys is ad times. Obviously default, these will be running, Monday through Sunday, 24 hours a day, but you might decide to say, hey, I only want to run my ads Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And so again, it's going to be dependent. All these things a lot of times are dependent on, again, your business, your demographic, B2B, B2C, service-based, product-based, who your clientele is, everything like that. But it is nice that you get to kind of control that. And you can also change that at any time. Maybe you start with running ads 24/7 and you start to realize that you're just not getting many clicks, or even if you notice, maybe you're running these ads in the middle of the night, and you're actually getting leads that are coming in, but maybe they're just not very good quality leads. Maybe then we kind of shift the time of when we're kind of looking to run ads. So as we get into kind of organizing accounts, it's just important to understand that you really kind of have four main components, technically five, but you have your account being kind of the fifth. So you can kind of see the org chart, so to speak. This is how you're setting up your Google Ads account. We have our account. We're essentially going to set up different campaigns. And underneath those campaigns are grouping of AdWords, which then have the ads and keywords within them. So you can kind of start to see as we start to, every company, anybody that starts an AdWords account should have multiple ad groups, should have multiple, again, usually multiple kind of campaigns. And to kind of give you some example of those is here. So let's use a furniture store as an example. We have a furniture store here. We would essentially run a campaign for tables and a campaign for beds. So you really want to start way up there. And then we would have ad groups of coffee tables and bedside tables. To be honest with you, the more specific you can usually be and kind of break out your account within different ad groups, with different ads, with different keywords, usually the more successful you're going to be. When you start to get too general, is a lot of times that's when we see ads not performing very well, because there's too much to assume, there's too much variance, there's too many different people that you're trying to communicate with. And again, you're trying to serve too many people, jack of all trades, master of none type of kind of thing. So hopefully this kind of gives you an idea here of how you can start to kind of set these up. Now, once you get this hierarchy and kind of structure set up, it's mainly kind of, we've got it set, and now we're just adding to it, or we're kind of modifying it. So a lot of times, of course, your account setup is going to be probably the most labor intensive, because you have to set all these things up initially. And then moving on, it is, yes, sometimes addition, but a lot of times just, again, kind of modification and edits to your kind of current account. Now, getting into actually creating Google Ads. Now, this is honestly where kind of rubber hits the road. And this is where we're actually going to start creating the things that people are going to see. A lot of stuff that we were kind of talking about is mainly the kind of course, structure and things that it's more pertaining to Google and Google Ads as a whole. But now this is going to be mainly for, again, actually creating the ads that people are going to see. So it's important to kind of realize that you can have unlimited amount of ads per ad group. So again, if we're going back here, just kind of looking at it, if we're doing ads on coffee tables, we can have unlimited, again, from there. Now, what's kind of nice is when we get to the next step and we start talking about those responsive ones, you'll start to see that Google is essentially kind of helping you with this. Back in the day, we had to be a lot more specific to say, hey, when you had to create all the different variations, the different ads yourself, we a lot of times had to say, okay, hey, create 3 different versions at least per ad group, create more if you can, all those types of things. But what's kind of nice now is Google has a much more kind of, again, just sophisticated system to really assist you with that. And we'll get that into our next screen. But the one thing before we get into that, it's also realizing that, we do have character limits. And so character limits are going to be per headline and kind of description as well. And so what we kind of see here is that a headline is going to be up to 30 characters. The reason I point this out is a character is going to be any letter, spacing, or punctuation. So they get eaten up pretty quick. So we kind of have to be creative when we're starting to look at these different call to action headlines, these attention grabbing headlines, and these kind of descriptions, staying within either the 30 or the 90 kind of characters. So you might be asking yourself, well, Ben, how does that all kind of come together? And that's essentially what we're kind of talking about with these responsive ads. It's really a responsive ads builder. You can kind of see an example here on the left-hand side that we have the 30 character limit here. And what we're doing is we're creating a bunch of different types of headlines that we could potentially use. And if you were to scroll further down on this page on this screen, you would see the right-hand screenshot that then has the different types of descriptions. You can see the different headlines are below the 30 character limit and the descriptions are below the 90 character limit. Well, again, a few things with this is we want to create as many different ones that are applicable as possible. Just don't create them just to create them, create good ones. What Google then does here, and you can kind of see this in this preview, is that they will essentially start to take these different types of headlines and mix them with the different kind of descriptions, really doing in the moment A/B testing for you. What that means is every time, someone looks for a, local insurance agent and you're running these types of ads, to you, they may show up with, 1, 2, and 3 headline with number 2 description. To me, they might be showing 4, 6, and 7 headline and number 3 description. What they're trying to do for you is to see which ones actually work better. Obviously, Google does this to not only make it easier for you, but if they can help you create better ads, they of course benefit because you'll like them better and you'll be able to stay with them and running ads further. So when we actually start creating these headlines and descriptions, there's a couple things to kind of keep in note or kind of some, tips or strategies to kind of look is, try to put some of the keywords in your ads, of course. It may not be, again, super mind-blowing, but it is important to kind of realize that, again, when someone is searching for something and they see that exact keyword, we can be able to do that. And there are some capabilities, which is kind of cool within Google Ads, that you can essentially communicate to Google to say, hey, whatever somebody searches right there, I want to put that into my ad. There are some capabilities to kind of do that as you're building some of these responsive kind of ones as well. Also, you want to make sure that we have kind of call to actions. You can see on the far and right, call us today for repairs, call now. We're trying to use different types of call to actions, but it's important to kind of do that. Remember, at the end of the day, this is an ad. And so we want to make sure that we have those ad components, which of course, a CTA is a huge one of that. And then another kind of, again, just kind of trick that we, again, have found that actually works better and studies have shown that it works better is capitalizing the first letter of each word. What it does is it actually just a lot of times stands out a little bit further. You're not going to get a better quality score from Google. You're not going to get better rankings. But what a lot of times what it does on a psychological level is that a lot of times we see that people's eye can go to it and can read it, again, quicker and more efficiently, which obviously can help someone pick your ad instead of someone maybe potentially above or below you. So this is, where you can even see here, we've got, again, probably close to 10 different headlines and we've got at least here 4 different, descriptions. So you're going to have a lot of different variations and combination possibilities that Google's going to be able to go for you and be able to kind of determine what's going to be best and what's going to, serve individuals there. Google also learns that maybe, again, they might be able to serve a certain ad to a certain person because of some of the back information that they know with searching history and things like that as well. So it's a really kind of cool, sophisticated system, but this is kind of how we all put it together. And one of the last components of your actual ad is the keyword, which again, the keyword is going to be the, part of the search term, the search query that a user is essentially searching for that's going to pull up your ad. And again, you are now determining all these. So that's what's kind of cool, of course, about Google Ads is you're coming to Google saying, hey, these, when someone types in this, this, and this, that's when I want my ad to kind of show up. And you can kind of see here that not only is the cost designated at the keyword level, but we also get to have different kind of, variations or different types of keywords to communicate to Google more or less the how descriptive you want to kind of go. So when someone does ask me, well, hey, Ben, how much do ads kind of cost? On average, now again, you can be above this, you can be below this, but on average, taking everybody into consideration, usually $2 to $4 per click is usually where we see things. I've seen them down to pennies. I've seen them up in the $20, $30, $80, again, from there. The reason for that is it's all based off of competition. So honestly, you could run ads here in Minnesota and in the exact same words could be, again, lower or higher than in Chicago or New York. So it all depends on kind of the competition, but you'll be able to see that when you kind of do this. That's why, again, your match type, which is essentially just talking about the type of keyword, is going to be important because we want to make sure that Google firmly understands what we're trying to communicate. And this little graph here hopefully can kind of, show you that. A lot of people just start with broad match. And you can kind of see that if I type in women's hats, I can get any synonyms. I can get related searches, other relevant variations. Some of them might work, but a lot of times what we see is you get a lot of, again, kind of fluff or crap, again, that gets into those that just isn't, again, probably what you want to be paying for. But sometimes it's nice to maybe start with broad and then start to kind of slim it down. You can also start with broad match modifier. You can do phrase match, exact match, and you can kind of see as you get more and more specific, you can see what that example would be like. Most people, again, and the most kind of successful ads usually are kind of in the middle where you're not too specific, but you're not too broad. So a lot of times we see broad match modifier and phrase match, again, being there. Doesn't mean that you can't have a success with broad match. Doesn't mean you can't have success, with exact match, but that's where a lot of times we kind of see that. No matter what type of match type, no matter what type of ad, no matter how many keywords, one of the key important things though, is to make sure you pay attention to negative keywords. This is one of the most important things about your Google Ads management, or account management. What negative keywords are is to essentially say, Google, if at any point you see this term in this key or in someone's search query, do not show my ad. So some specific examples could be here. If you're selling fancy, again, Kentucky Derby type of women's hats, you don't want anybody looking for baseball hats. So if anytime someone types in, again, baseball in their search, Google will say, okay, hey, I'm not going to show your ad. A lot of times I recommend, for instance, if you're running ads, you should automatically put in words like free, cheap, inexpensive, affordable. Again, maybe some of those work for you, but most likely if someone's looking for something free, if someone's looking for a free service, free product, cheap, most likely that's probably not the client you want to be spending money on. So like that's just kind of an example of how anybody could just right away put in some good negative keywords. Again, most likely, some that are related to your business that you wouldn't kind of want to show for. And those would be a negative. But where really rubber hits the road is as you start to do daily, weekly, monthly kind of management on your ads, you're going to want to take a look at, obviously, the words that are being used by users that are pulling up your ads to see which ones you wouldn't want to pay for again. And we can kind of make those into negative kind of keywords. So the idea is that you would put in all of these keywords. On average, I usually recommend that per kind of ad group. So when we're talking about coffee tables, when we're talking about those, I usually recommend around 15 to 20 type of keywords that you can kind of do. You can go a little less, you can go a little more, but that's usually like a really good one. If you're going much more than 20, you might actually want to just create your own separate ad group, because again, around that 15 to 20 keywords should be sufficient enough to be able to get you to the right people if we're using match type correctly, if we're managing negative keywords correctly, all of those types of things. And so we would essentially submit these, and then Google just goes and just makes sure that it's legit, that they're connected, and then kind of goes live. But before a lot of times you do this, you might be asking yourself, well, Ben, that's great, but how do I know which keywords to go after? How do I know what people are searching for? That comes down to keyword research. Google does have an internal free platform called the Keyword Planner tool that Google will essentially allow you to do some keyword research as well as suggest. Like you can put in actually like your URL of your website page, your landing page, and Google will try to pull in some information to give you some recommendations. You can even put in some different keywords that you're going over that you know of already. Google will analyze those and the website and try to give you some recommendations. You also, and it's really not a bad idea, to go outside of Google and to actually do some other keyword research. And the two platforms that I recommend are, one of them is called Moz, M-O-Z, and the other one is called SEM Rush. Both of those are really good ones that you can even take a step further, and you can even do some more keyword research to try to figure out what keywords are going to give you the best ROI. Now, again, there's something with doing keyword research at the beginning, but one of the biggest things that I try to get across to people is, Google Ads is not a platform that you can just set it and forget it. If you do that, you are not going to have a good ROI, and most likely you're going to be spending a lot more money than you should or could be if you're not managing it. That's where sometimes Google Ads does get overwhelming for people, because this is a very powerful platform. And again, sometimes just the wrong setting or the wrong keyword or the wrong match type can be having you spend extra, again, dollars, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars if you're not watching and paying attention. So again, I'm not here to kind of scare you away from AdWords because it's super powerful. It's just making sure that you realize, because it is powerful, that you put the certain restraints, or, again, you're, making sure that, again, with great power comes great responsibility, that since this is very powerful, don't let it kind of control you, and make sure that we're actually spending the time and energy to be able to put into this platform, or getting help if that's internal or external as well. The last thing to kind of talk about here is you can also add things that are called ad extensions. And you may have seen these where there's just extra information on the ads. These can not only help you stand out, but these can be super valuable information that some people kind of connect with and are able to then, again, have on your ad. So some of them, as you can see, is a location extension. So of course, if you have a brick and mortar spot, absolutely you should be having this. The local bakery that's running ads, absolutely have a local extension. In today's world, if you're working from home and you have that, probably you're not going to have a local extension from that. We also can have an affiliate location extension. So for instance, if you have products in different retail chains, you can actually be running ads and actually helping people find those products in those other retail chains. And last but not least is, when we talked about those different types of restrictions on headlines and descriptions, if you need more text that's kind of applicable, that might be kind of a cool extra, title, or might help your ad, like free delivery, 24/7 customer support, you can essentially pay for extra line of text. Also, call extension. This is probably the most, popular one, and the one that we most likely recommend the highest is a call extension. You can see right here, this ad example here is someone can literally, without actually even having to go into your website and be converted from your website, if your ad does such a good job and connects with that person, they can literally just click that button and be calling you right away. So it can be super, super powerful, because a lot of times people just want to get to somebody to kind of talk to, or to kind of get a service. This especially goes forward as if like you're in any type of emergency type of service, or, again, kind of quick, like I have a client that does emergency ice dam removal. Well, these work great because someone just wants a number to call because they've got an issue here. Doesn't mean that you have to be in an emergency type of field to do that. But the idea is that anybody can kind of benefit as long as you want to get calls. Most likely, if you're just selling products and you're not looking for people to call you, probably not the best, again, one for there. but most service-based companies are absolutely going to encourage that. And you're going to see a lot of call extensions. Like this is the one, again, School Marketing, of course, runs ad for our services. We definitely use call extensions there, and they are very successful. And last but not least, you can see some other ones here, site links. So we can actually link to other spots on our website, which can be helpful for people. Another call out extension we kind of talked about. Price extension, you can actually start to show your different prices. Structured snippet, what we can actually do is we can pull in different kind of information like service category, products, all of those types of things that are related to either our services or our products that we're kind of doing. So again, really at the end of the day, what an extension is it's just more information or another kind of call to action or way to engage with your kind of business or your ad without necessarily always having to go right to the page that you want someone to. The majority of people will still go to the page. If you're running an ad on snow removal, and of course you're linking to the snow removal page, again, you're going to kind of see that, again, from there. Okay, so now kind of wrapping up before I want to open it up to, again, different questions, is that I know we've talked about a lot. I know we've blown through it. There's a lot to kind of digest here. And so what we're kind of talking about here, again, remember, is SEM, search engine marketing. This is encompassing the pay-per-click system, the display, the retargeting. We talk about our account structure. We talk about those campaigns. And we got the furniture store, then we've got the tables and the beds, but then we split those out between coffee tables and bedside tables and those types of things. When we're writing those ads, remember the new responsive ad types that we're kind of doing, a ton of different titles, a ton of different descriptions. Google's going to take those and mash them all up and start to do A/B testing for you. And then last but not least is not only the ad extensions where we can add those to our ads to, again, make our ads potentially more appealing to others. And also a lot of times, sometimes take up more space, which can be just an added benefit. But then also realizing that, one of the biggest things I like to kind of tell people when it comes to ads is having better SEO benefits your ads. Having ads does not benefit your SEO. So just kind of keep that in mind when we're looking at that is, SEO is like having a long-term business relationship with Google. Google's going to take the money, again, regardless. But if you have a better SEO relationship with Google, what a lot of times we'll see is you'll be able to get clicks for a lot of times less money and better positioning because Google trusts you. So it's really a symbiotic kind of relationship, but with that, it's a one-way. So SEO benefits SEM, SEM does not benefit SEO. So with that said, I'd love to open it up for questions. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate you guys bearing with me. I'd love to see if we have any questions that I can kind of help you guys answer a little bit more specifically. And feel free to either unmute yourself or put them in the chat. I do have a question here that was just sent to me that said, hey, Ben, how should we link to different pages for our different ads? And I think what we're trying to get after is that, of course, every ad that you create, you can send to a different kind of landing page. So one little kind of tip that we look at, it's actually a really big tip, is that you want to try to avoid sending your ads to the homepage. What you really want to do is send your ads to the most specific page possible. And so what we're talking about there is, again, if we're running snow removal ads, don't just send them to the homepage of bensnowremovalservice.com. Send them to bensnowremovalservice.com/services/snow-removal. Send them to that page because that's what people are looking for. That can also help your ads get a better quality score and just relate to Google, as well as when Google's trying to make recommendations for you, if it's keywords or whatnot, they're able to do that as well. So again, when in doubt, always send them to the most specific page possible when we're doing ads. I have another question about how much, again, we should be spending on Google Ads. Now this is a kind of a tricky one because it does depend on competition as well as your cost per click. But a good rule of thumb is your minimum budget should really be around $500 to $1,000 per month. The reason we kind of do that, if you work backwards, is using $500 as a bare minimum is, again, if we do the math, that's about $16.66 per day. Well, again, if we have $2 to $4 cost per click, let's just say $4, that's at least 4 to 8 kind of clicks per day with the $2 to $4 kind of range. The problem that people run into is if they're like, well, Ben, can I just run ads at again, $250, $200, $100, you can see that math kind of working back. Is that if we only did 250, we're only talking about $8 per month, or excuse me, $8 per day. And a lot of times we can't get enough traction to be able to kind of run these ads. We can't just be running ads to get one click here, one click there, because the system just doesn't work and your ads aren't going to perform. So that's ultimately where, when it, realistically, when it comes to SEM, you really do need to look to kind of have that minimum kind of budget. You can get away with a little bit smaller budget if you're potentially just running some display ads, or if you're doing AdWords Express, but it's not going to be much lower. You really have to look, if you're going to commit to this, you do have to look at that $500 to $1,000 per month. Now, again, the beauty of it is setting up your ads, tracking your ads. We can even set up conversion codes. We can really equate that when you're spending this much, this is how much you're kind of getting back from it. And at the end of the day, this is one of the most highly successful ROI type of digital advertising out there, and the most correlatable, meaning that, when we do SEO and social media, those both definitely help, but there's a little bit of arbitrary kind of feel when it comes to those. SEM is about as direct as you can essentially kind of get. Awesome. Well, it doesn't look like I have any more questions, so I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Here's my contact information if you guys have any other questions about that. Also, we, again, a way that we kind of give back at Skoll Marketing beyond just doing these workshops is we also do offer free consultations. These aren't sales pitches. If you want to talk about our services, absolutely we can do that. But we know that sometimes in a classroom style like this, we may have some more specific questions about our ads account, or really anything digital marketing. And that's where we're here to kind of help. So if you're interested in those, feel free just to reach out and we'll schedule a free consultation. No obligations. It's just our way of kind of giving back to give you guys some more information. Also, if you like these types of topics and these type of workshops and webinars, I encourage you to check us out at skollmarketing.com/workshops, where you can see all our upcoming live workshops. And also remember, we do record all of our workshop topics, and you can actually get those on demand at our YouTube channel, which you can find at skollmarketing.com, or simply going to YouTube and searching for Skoll Marketing. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you guys took a few things away from this and it was beneficial, and that you guys have a great day, and Skoll.